think of ourselves as the most powerful beings in the universe, it's unsettling to discover that we're wrong. Time has come to see the world as it is.
Can we pull back the veil of static and reach into the source of all being? Behind this curtain lies this random pattern generator. You will be responsible for an escalation that will destroy everything.
In this episode, I'm going to talk about a very frightening experience I had one time while visiting my family. I should start this story off by saying that when I leave my temple, which is my apartment, for an extended period of time, I am quite a bit more vulnerable to negative spiritual influence than usual. To help counteract this, many of my spirit contacts and allied deities come with me and stay with me the whole time to protect me. I should also add that my family, meaning my parents, brother, and sister-in-law, are all rather strict Christians. I've previously mentioned on this podcast how strict Christianity of the modern, Western, organized, non-Gnostic variety is a hotbed of evil and demonic forces. In other words, if you really want to experience a demonic entity, join a strict Christian church. Demonic beings flock to Christians like flies to honey. So, needless to say, staying at my family's Christian household is a dangerous period of time for me, and my spirits and deities work overtime with me, so to speak, to keep me safe from demonic influence and activity. I also mentioned previously in this podcast the time when I had to fight off the massive black devilish demiurgic deity of evil associated with Christianity when my family joined hands in prayer. The experience I'm about to recount was another such attack by the same horrible god. I was in the room I stay in when I visit my family, reading a book, when I heard my dad choking in the next room. My spirit guide had already told me, urgently, that I must not leave the room, as my spirits and deities had already set protective wards around it, guarding me against the nasty beings associated with my family's religion. I got up to leave the room to make sure my dad was okay, but my guide urged me once again not to. I said something like, "He's my goddamn father, I have to," but he still insisted that I must not open the door, as it would make me vulnerable. Then, the light in my room began flickering on and off. I said, "All right, that's it," and directly disobeying the urgent warnings of my spirit guide, I opened the door and left the room. It turned out that my dad was fine. The choking I heard was just him dealing with rather normal sleep apnea type issues he has. He told me that he had accidentally flipped the light switch from my room on and off, mistaking it for a switch associated with the light in the room where he was. I know, it's strange that there was a light switch for the room outside it, but that is because it was originally basically a large storage closet. When I went back in my room and resumed reading, my mind began going down a dark path of negativity for some reason. I became absolutely consumed with jealousy, self-pity, and furious hatred. It deteriorated to the point where I was most certainly not myself anymore. I wished harm on everyone that I knew and loved. I even made plans to insult my close friends and be generally hateful towards everyone else in my life. I was so consumed by unbearable feelings of hatred and self-pity that I pulled my knees up to my chest, wrapped my arms around them, and began rocking back and forth over and over again. Then a terrible, guttural, rasping sound began growling out of me. Something else had me, completely. Something absolutely demonic and terrible. Then, suddenly, I felt another presence very close to me. It began feeding images and thoughts into my head. It was chastising me for being so ignorant, for being silly enough to have such ridiculous self-pity. What right did I have? Compared to most people in this world, even most people in our culture, I am extremely fortunate and even blessed. How could I be so utterly stupid to be so consumed by self-pity and hatred for others? The horrible, jealous, and hateful emotions were suddenly replaced by a feeling of overwhelming gratitude, of love and joy. The horrid, guttural growling sound turned into joyous laughter. How could I have been so silly? I was, thankfully, to my relief, my true self again. The horrible feelings and emotions that had just consumed me were now so alien and distant that I couldn't believe the absurdity of my behavior. How could that have happened to me? My guide told me that what happened there was the early stages of full-on possession. He had warned me against leaving the room, leaving the magical circle of protection, but I ignored his warnings. The being that was possessing me was none other than the same horrible deity I had perceived and cast out when my family joined hands in prayer at the Panera Bread. This being is known as Jehovah in the Old Testament. My spirits tell me that he is responsible for the horrible, dogmatic raping of original mystery traditions in the terrible organized religions, be they Jewish, Christian, or Islamic. This was the horrid deity behind suicide bombers, the Inquisition, Catholic boy rape, and God hates fags signs. The presence I felt that pulled me out of the possession was the same allied deity which came to protect me in the aforementioned Panera Bread by taking on the form of a flaming armor-clad warrior and driving the religious demiurge away. I don't want to give the name of the allied deity, both out of respect to him and also because our culture has horribly distorted his role and what he represents, and have also warped his name into referring to the devil, whatever that really is. I will say that he is of the Jewish mythological tradition and was considered originally to be a member of God's court. One of his closest advisors, in fact. So yeah, let me just reiterate what I've stated here already. Avoid modern Western fundamentalist Christianity at all costs. And now, the news.
What the hell in God's name is going down here?
A 40-year-old Native American woman and her niece claim they saw a ghostly humanoid entity in southeast Texas. Kay Celestine says she and her 8-year-old niece, Michaela Suruth Dibol, were sitting inside their vehicle parked on Bragg Road when they spotted the alleged being late in the evening. Night had fallen by the time we arrived, so after traveling a mile or so, we parked the car and just sat there for a few minutes, she told Cryptozoology News about their 2005 encounter. I guess we had sat there around 20 minutes or so. Suddenly, she explained, she noticed a dense green light coming from the distance and slowly moving towards them. We were looking south. I adjusted my glasses to my face and closed my eyes, then opened them again. I could make out that it was an apparition of a man dressed in overalls like an old-timey train worker. He was carrying a lantern in his right hand that was glowing green, said Celestine. I didn't pay any attention to what kind of footwear, if any, that he was wearing, because I was too shook up to say anything. I glanced over at Michaela, and she was frozen with fright, her little eyes as big as saucers. The main reason neither of us could speak is because he didn't have a head on his shoulders. Oh. The entity reportedly walked about 12 feet before vanishing into thin air. I screamed, "Look! He ain't got no head!" Michaela just sat there in a silent daze for a few minutes. The woman said they waited inside the car until they were able to calm down and drove away. On their way home, she claims, they observed a similar light, which promptly disappeared when they reached the end of the road. Celestine is not the first person in the area to report about the peculiar apparition. The light of Saratoga, also dubbed the Bragg Road Ghost Light, is a legend well known among the locals. Eyewitnesses' reports describe the purported headless human-like being randomly appearing and disappearing in a fog of green light. In South Africa, a woman states that a snake-like creature is living inside her body and that it harasses her on a daily basis. 40-year-old Midrand resident Eliza Sithole believes that the alleged being was planted into her body by her ex-boyfriend after their relationship deteriorated. After I broke up with him, I felt something licking me, she told Happy Miguni, a reporter for the Daily Sun SA. They just lick me and move around my body. I spoke to my ex-boyfriend, but he says he doesn't know about this. Days later, Sithole claims worms began crawling out of her, so she went to the hospital. She did not elaborate on what the doctor prescribed. According to Sithole, her boyfriend had warned her that she wouldn't be able to enjoy life when the woman broke up the relationship in 2010. I go to the toilet only once every 3 months. When I eat, I don't get full, she claims. And although the symptoms certainly resemble those of a parasitic disease, the woman and neighbors in the village believe there is something more sinister to it. Sometimes I feel like a snake licking me at the back and in front. Then it feels like a human, but it's a creature, she said. It moves around my body, even my head. Sometimes it's people, sometimes I see a snake. But the woman's ordeal doesn't end there. She says that this reptilian creature talks to her at night. It says, "You are my wife." It kisses me, but then, when I wake up, there's no one there. The existence of a tokolosh, a dwarf-like water spirit present in Zulu mythology, is a common belief among villagers in South Africa. According to the folklore, the entity can become invisible when the victim drinks water. It is also believed that these spirits are invoked by the victim's enemies to cause physical and psychological harm, and that only a witch doctor, referred to as Nanga, can fix the legendary malady. In early January, tragedy struck when a South African woman claimed she had killed her baby after he had reportedly turned into a snake and attempted to eat her. She was promptly referred to a mental institution. A man claims he saw a small gray alien-like creature inside a house in southern Michigan. The Lapeer County witness, who didn't reveal his name, states that the encounter was the last in a series of UFO sightings that took place during the summer of 1994. He said his mother was driving he and one of his friends back home from a weekly bowling session at Oxford, Michigan, when he noticed some bright lights in an empty field on the left side of the road. I thought there was a football game or some event going on, not realizing where we were. In Palos Verdes Estates, California, on August 17th or 31st, 1971, John Hodges and Pete Rodriguez were walking toward their cars. A diffuse beam of white light shone from behind a clump of trees on a lonely road, 3 miles from the coast. When they got in their car and turned on the headlights, they consciously remembered being confronted by extraterrestrial beings about 6 feet ahead of them. Hodges saw 2. Rodriguez remembers only 1. Both witnesses described the beings as resembling disembodied brains. Hodges said the larger one was about the size of the trunk of a human being and had a red spot, like a hematoma, on it, while the other, smaller being was the size of a softball. After staring at the strange things for a few seconds, the two frightened men drove off. When Hodges got home, it was 4:30 a.m., 2 hours later than it should have been. 5 years later, further details of the incident emerged under hypnosis. Hodges remembered seeing a mist around the two bluish brain-like beings. When the larger one came toward the car, Hodges recalled hearing a voice, telepathic he assumes, telling them to be careful, to better understand themselves, that they would be instruments of their own fate. As the being floated right outside the windshield, Hodges observed that the bright red spot, which he thinks may have been a growth, covered about 1/8 of the brain. After dropping Rodriguez off at home, Hodges remembered being in his car and having a dream. He suddenly found himself back at the scene of the incident, talking to the larger being. "Why do you come to me?" he asked, at which point he was enveloped by something and appeared in a large room where other different beings were present. They were skinny, about 7 feet tall, and had gray skin. Their eyes were very thin and yellow, their mouths had no lips, and their noses were flat. Rodriguez also noted that their hands, which were webbed to the first knuckle, had 6 long, thin fingers and a thumb. The brain being told Hodges that they were monitoring his world because it had too much power, which was a reference to atomic bombs. On a large television screen, Hodges was shown different places on Earth highlighted with pinpoints of light, indicating places where humans could destroy themselves. Hodges was then shown a picture of a dead planet. Then he heard a buzzing sound and suddenly he was sitting in his car again. Subsequently, Hodges recalled having further encounters during which the humanoids told him they were from Zeta Reticuli and that the brain-like beings were merely translators. On October 11th, 1954, at dawn, in Heimersdorf, France, Annie Pratch, her sister Rosalind, and 2 other persons saw a luminous object on the ground. It became fiery red in color and flew away when they came near. On October 11th, 1954, at dawn, in Beauquais, France, a large red object was seen flying very fast at treetop level while cattle panicked. 3 witnesses. On October 11th, 1954, at 0500 hours, at La Varande, Algeria, a large disc flying very low over roads scared 2 truck drivers, Monsieurs Gaston Breu and Amora, who stopped their gasoline truck and ran away into the fields while the object flew on toward Media in silence. On October 11th, 1954, at 1930 hours, in Taupignac, France, 3 men driving near Taupignac got out of their car to observe an intense red sphere in the sky. Then they discovered a round machine with a dome, 6 meters diameter, giving off a yellow-red light, 200 meters away at 10 meters altitude. It was motionless and silent. It suddenly moved horizontally for a short distance and landed behind a woods. 2 witnesses went closer and saw 4 dwarfs, 1 meter tall, who seemed busy with the machine. The creatures rushed inside when the witnesses arrived within 15 meters. The witnesses were blinded by a sudden burst of light, blue, then orange, then red, and the object took off vertically at fantastic speed. On October 11th, 1954, at 2150 hours, in Birac, France, 4 persons, among them Julia Juste, Maria Barbeau, and Marion Latinier of Jarnac, saw 2 luminous spheres flying in the same direction. Having stopped and maneuvered in midair, the larger one took on a deep red color, turned to an intense white light with a red aura, and both landed. Witnesses did not wait. Now, strange events in New Zealand. In Blenheim, woman milking cows saw a UFO 30 feet in diameter with 2 strong green lights and jets sending out orange flames. She could see 2 entities inside glass dome. UFO flew off at speed, making high-pitched noise. 13th July 1959. In Brooklyn, Wellington, guest house bombarded with stones and some coins overnight, and again the following 2 nights, March 1963. In Christchurch, 30 miles east of Christchurch, Japanese fishing boat netted carcass of possible sea monster, April 1977. In Coromandel Peninsula, reports of hairy man-beast. In Para Harbor, unidentified submarine object seen 100 feet long, 12th January 1965. 24 miles off Littleton, crew members of Japanese fishing boat saw a sea monster looking like hippopotamus, 28th April 1971. Fishermen at Littleton said they too had seen funny things while fishing. At Rugged Island off Stewart Island, fishermen saw a strange craft which came up out of the water, 13th November 1965. At South Island off northeast coast, Wellington Airport saw unidentified targets on radar, and pilot saw lights in the sky on several nights. They were filmed at 30th December 1978, and scientific analysis was able to eliminate all natural explanations like planets, meteors, balloons, aircraft, military maneuvers, fishing boats. At Lake Taupo, Lake Monster reports 1980. In Te Kuiti, in railway excavations, workmen found cavity in newly fragmented rock, sedimentary mudstone, 12 feet down, an imprisoned frog found therein. It was pulled out alive. Later, another was found, November 1982. In Tigare, patch of light, fluid like quicksilver, entered house during thunderstorm, 8th September 1981. At Waimata Valley, near Gisborne, farmer saw landed UFO at night. It glowed bright blue and had bright red interior. 2 entities were kidnapping his dogs, and he fired at them. They dropped the dogs and ran away, 2nd December 1977. In Waipawa, man saw a gray torpedo-shaped airship with 3 occupants, one of whom shouted to him in an unknown tongue. 3rd August 1909, one case in an airship scare over New Zealand in 1909. In Wellington, poltergeist outbreak March 1963. In Whitstone, near Oamaru, 3 4th-inch cube of red-hot metal fell from the sky, hitting tractor, 24th March 1961. Now in Katsina, Nigeria, fireball appeared inside house with thick mud walls and one tiny window, 1956.
What the hell in God's name is going down here?
That was a public service announcement designed to scare the shit out of you.
He was abducted by aliens earlier this afternoon. That little girl got lost under the bed. She went into an alternate dimension.
I'm going to read some more of the experiences of patients on DMT from the book DMT, The Spirit Molecule by Dr. Rick Straussman. There was the lightest feeling of a beckoning for me to follow something. It was like a light on the horizon, like 2 roads merging with the horizon. There were some eyes looking at me, friendly. They wanted to see who was there and seemed to say that I would follow them later. I had the expectation that I would be going out, but I went in, into every cell in my body. It was amazing. It wasn't just my body. Themselves, it's all connected. Oh, that's what I did. Okay. I felt the DMT go in, and it burned in my vein. It was hard to breathe into it. Then the patterns began. I said to myself, let me go through you. At that point, it opened, and I was very much somewhere else. I believe it was at that point that I went out into the universe, dancing with the star system. I asked myself, why am I doing this to myself? And then there was, this is what you've always been searching for. This is what all of you has always been searching for. There was a movement of color. The colors were words. I heard what the colors were saying to me. I was trying to look out, but they were saying, go in. I was looking for God outside. They said, God is in every cell of your body. And I was feeling it, totally open to it, and I kept opening to it more, and I just took it in. The colors kept telling me things, but they were telling me things so I not only heard what I was seeing, but I also felt it in my cells. I say felt, but it was like no other felt. More like a knowing that was happening in my cells. That God is in everything and that we are all connected and that God dances in every cell of life and that every cell of life dances in God. I am changed. I will never be the same. To simply say this almost seems to lessen the experience. I don't think that anyone hearing or reading this can truly grasp what I felt, can really understand it deeply and completely. The euphoria goes on into eternity, and I am part of that eternity. Before you spoke the words, okay, we're done, there arose in me an energy so forceful that no words could describe it. It drove my heart. The swirl of color reminded me of the visual experience the day before, but multiplied a millionfold. I could only hold on, remembering not to fall off into the distracting light show. Then everything stopped. The darkness opened to light, and on the other side of space all was utterly still. Then the words, just because it is possible, emerged out of nothingness and filled me. The great power sought to fill all possibilities. It was amoral, but it was love, and it just was. There was no benevolent God, only this primordial power. All of my ideas and beliefs seemed absurdly ridiculous. I never wanted to forget this. I was aware I could open my eyes and relate to those around me. But first I had to wait for all this to solidify, to allow the fullness of the experience to congeal so I could bring it back to the others. I wondered, why come back? I was reluctant to open my eyes. When I did, the room seemed very bright, but otherwise quite as I had left it. It came on fast and big, and an incredible pressure arose in my head, pushing me back. It blasted me into the realm in which pure living energy begins to take form. As it began to slow down, I saw the process of separated awareness. This slowing down creates form and consciousness. Before the slowing down, it's not there. It's not unconscious, but not conscious. It's real of its own substance, not fragmented. It's amazing how slowly things move here on Earth. Going out and slowly down into the periphery, to the fringes of it, into form, there is the endless outflow of creation, effortless, and then this fast process takes it back in. My little piece of energy goes in and out, too, not more or less than any other piece. You can't die. You can't go away. You can neither add nor subtract. There is a continual outflow that is immortality. The I am notion goes around and around. I have the certainty of that. There were loads of paradoxes. I was not disoriented, but there was no orientation. I didn't know where or who I was, but there was nothing to know who or where it was. I didn't have to wonder what to do next. There was no empty spaces. They were all filled up. I believe the last trip was a near-death experience. Everything is more alive now. I'm not bored, even when I should be. It was the awe and fear of God. I thought about barely anything else for the first day or two afterward. The desire to talk about it to anyone and everyone faded after 3 or 4 days. I couldn't watch it all. It was so busy. Something asked me, "What do you want? How much do you want?" I answered that I wanted to see fewer things, but more of it. That reduced the intensity of the busy, crackling, colorful, Chinese-like panels. It became more manageable and focused. I'm feeling freer about going out there. I'm not lost. I'm asking questions and getting answers. The first session was a lot of fun. I felt myself lifting off the bed 3 or 4 feet. The visions rapidly developed into an almost sparkling electric blue-green light pattern. I asked, "Are you here again?" No answer. So I watched a low-lying city on a flat plain on the far horizon mutate through a variety of colors and hues, with many ill-defined things floating in the air above the city. Then I noticed a middle-aged female, with a pointed nose and light greenish skin, sitting off to my right, watching this changing city with me. She had her right hand on a dial that seemed to control the panorama we were watching. She turned slightly toward me and asked, "What else would you like?" I answered telepathically, "Well, what else have you got? I have no idea what you can do." Then she stood up, walked up to my right forehead, touched it and warmed it up, and then used a sharp object to open up a panel in my right temple, releasing a tremendous amount of pressure. This made me feel much better than I'd felt before, even though I realized I'd felt fine in the first place. For the first time ever, I went into a blank state before the DMT injection. I had thought, no hopes, no fears, no expectations. The trip started with an electric tingling in my body, and quickly the visual hallucinations arrived. Then I noticed 5 or 6 figures walking rapidly alongside me. They felt like helpers, fellow travelers. A humanoid male figure turned toward me, threw his right arm up toward the patchwork of bright colors, and asked, "How about this?" The kaleidoscopic patterns immediately became brighter and moved more rapidly. A second, and then a third, asked and did the same thing. At that point, I decided to go further, deeper. I immediately saw a bright yellow-white light directly in front of me. I chose to open to it. I was consumed by it and became part of it. There were no distinctions, no figures or lines, shadows or outlines. There was no body or anything inside or outside. I was devoid of self, of thought, of time, of space, of a sense of separateness or ego or of anything but the white light. There are no symbols in my language that can begin to describe that sense of pure being, oneness, and ecstasy. There was a great sense of stillness and ecstasy. I have no idea how long I was in this confluence of pure energy, or whatever, however I might describe it. Finally, I felt myself tumbling gently and sliding backward away from this light, sliding down a ramp. I could see myself doing this, a naked, thin, luminous, and childlike being that glowed with a warm yellow light. My head was enlarged, and my body was that of a 4-year-old child. Waves of the light touched me as my body receded from it. I was almost dizzy with happiness as the slide down the ramp finally ended. I think I'm down. It's interesting. I chose to enter a bright light. It wasn't too conscious a choice. It wasn't that scary. I can't believe I'm doing this. That you're doing this. There were wire people everywhere riding bicycles, like program people, like video game people having fun. I watched them. They were blue-green, running all around me, like being in a parking tower. I forget what happened at the end. They did it for a long time. I kept wondering if anything else would happen. Slowly the trip ended, but I can't remember how.
Time has come to see the world as it is.
I'm going to continue reading the story from Mama Lola by Karen McCarthy Brown. As Alud protectively circled her arm around the body of Irma's mother, she said with real conviction, "I'm very happy you come, great Loco." Opening her arms wide, Alud added, "The house is for you." Then dropping her voice to the tone of a child begging from a parent, she murmured, "Papa Loco, my dear, pass your hand over my body. Life is not good for me." The spirit responded to her in a breathy, cracked voice indicative of Loco's advanced age. "I don't give luck." "I know you don't give luck, Papa. I know that not your way," Alud said, sounding only a little disappointed. She recovered quickly and began to introduce the people standing nearby. Pointing to Robert, she said, "This person a child of the house. He never desert the house, never." Indicating a woman who had gone through the voodoo marriage to Loco, she proclaimed, "This woman your wife." Then sweeping her arm across the room, Alud announced, "All the women here your wife." Speaking in his whispery old voice, Loco asked for someone whose name I did not catch. Alud responded, "She could not come. She got nobody to watch her kids. I'm going to tell you ask about her." "You are family spirit," Alud crooned, gently stroking the side of Loco's face. "Me, I'm going to do everything you want me to do. When you tell me work, I'm going work. When you tell me sit, I'm going sit. When you tell me run, I'm going run. When you tell me stand, I'm going stand. My house is for you." This possession performance, like most in voodoo, was a complex event. Alud was not only relating to one of the most venerable voodoo spirits, she was also relating to an elderly woman who had once saved her life. Just after Alud's birth, when her mother was suffering from black fever and unable to breastfeed her, Irma's mother, who had just had a baby, stepped in as Alud's wet nurse. Alud feels she owes this woman a great debt. The social drama is never far from the surface in the religious drama of voodoo. Furthermore, in a small voodoo family such as this one, people know one another well enough to grasp even without words, the multiple meanings of what is happening. After Loco's short visit and the saluting of such key spirits as Don Bala and Azili, the main events of the evening began with the calling of the guest of honor, Azaka. To entice him to come to his birthday party, song after song was sung for the shy and awkward country bumpkin, Cousin Zaka. There was a song based on his title, Minister of Agriculture, and one on his character, Timid Man. Another song laid out the basic rules of family functioning on one level, while on another it suggested that poor country cousins would do better financially by not marrying one of their own kind. A male cousin doesn't take a female cousin O. Cousin O, cousin O. 50 cents is not money, 2 gourd, not a dollar. 2 gourd are the equivalent of 40 cents of U.S. currency. Haitian currency is one of the few in the world kept at a fixed official rate of exchange with the U.S. dollar. The exchange rate, 5 gourd to $1, is printed on the gourd note. Black market exchange rates, however, often devalue the gourd in relation to the dollar. Another of Cousin Zaka's songs was a sort of riddle, a form of oral literature loved by country people. Only a careful listener would have realized that it was the ravaged earth who spoke in this song. I'm unfortunate, I'm truly unfortunate, it's crippled I am. I know I'm unfortunate, truly, it's crippled I am. I'm unfortunate, it's not something I brought on myself. God created me unlucky, people sweep on my back. That song must have had a special poignancy for many in the room, for a significant number of them have been driven toward their new life in New York by the devastation of the land in Haiti. Today, the border between the Dominican Republic and Haiti is actually visible from the air because of the widespread deforestation and soil erosion on the Haitian end of the island of Hispaniola. Poverty, the ravaged earth, and the peasant life are indivisibly wedded in the figure of Azaka, who also exhibits the peasant's characteristic resignation to life's tragedies. As Alud pushed the energy in the room to new heights in an effort to échauffer, or heat things up, sufficiently to bring the spirit into our midst, she introduced a new song. Cousin Zaka, I'm going to prepare myself to set my affairs in order. People aren't God. Zaka, he does not want to see me. He says you are a stranger. He says you are a stranger. The family does not want to see me. This song, whose uplifting, almost joyous sound, plays counterpoint to its somber ambiguity. It is cousin himself who does not want to see me. Or am I seeking this help because a human family has rejected me? It was sung over and over, louder and louder. Alud jumped to her feet and began to dance, asan in hand. She was playing on our energies as if we were her musical instruments. Sensing the moment was right for Azaka's arrival, she was stirring the room into a spiraling intensity. In the instant just before our collective energy would have peaked and headed downward to refuel, Alud began a second round of salutations to Azaka. She was only halfway through the dips and turns that preceded the moment when she would prostrate herself before the altar when Azaka arrived. Her body shuddered and jerked, went lax for a moment, and then jerked again rapidly. These movements marked the struggle between the Aiwa and Alud's Gwo Bonange, or big guardian angel, who ordinarily presides in her head. When the spirit wins the contest, it almost always does, the Gwo Bonange is sent from the body to wander, as it does routinely during sleep, and Alud becomes the chwal, or horse of the spirit. Several people moved around Alud to help her, but there was no urgency in their movements. No one thought she was in danger. Indeed, many people in the room seemed to take no special note of her, as if the events were in no way unusual or remarkable. Her shoes were removed, and with one person supporting her under each arm, Azaka's blue scarf was tied around her neck. The first sign that Azaka was seated firmly on his horse was his high-pitched nasal chirp. Woo! 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 Whoop! Maggie reached for the voluminous blue denim shirt made especially for Azaka and struggled to put it on him. Then she put his straw hat on his head and hung his makout, or straw satchel, over one shoulder. Pants and shirt made from carabel, a sturdy blue denim woven in Haiti, a makout, and a broad-brimmed straw hat. These make up the standard costume of Azaka, as well as the traditional garb of the peasant farmer in Haiti. It is partly because of such similarities in clothing that Azaka came to be identified with the Catholic saint Isidore. In a chromolithograph widely distributed in Haiti, Isidore appears in blue pants and cape, a sack slung over one shoulder. The two are also connected by the agricultural theme. In the lithograph, Isidore kneels in prayer, while behind him, an angel plows the land with a pair of white oxen. Good evening, brother. Good evening, little cousin, Azaka said, speaking in the highly nasal voice characteristic of peasant speech. Then he looked timidly about the room from beneath the brim of his straw hat. Maggie was the first to address him. She whined. My friend, oh, little cousin, I'm not well, sick. Cousin, Azaka replied, cocking his head in a manner that communicated both sullenness and studied timidity. I think I'm going to go now. Oh, no, cousin, Maggie broke in, quickly changing to a placating tone. I'm going to give you food. Other voices joined Maggie's in pleading for the bounty of the table. Didn't he want to stay? Didn't he want to have something to eat? Cousin replied truculently. I didn't come all this way for a banana. No! Cousin, don't go, Maggie begged, with a touch of panic in her voice. Cousin continued to pout. Not for a yam, not for an avocado. Because, let me tell you, Maggie sputtered, you don't see all the work I do for you. It had been an exhausting day for Maggie, and she was on edge. She had left for work at 7 in the morning, and when she got home just after 5 that afternoon, she had begun preparations for Cousin's feast immediately. Furthermore, she had been on her feet all night, singing enthusiastically for each spirit. "I know you come a long way, cousin dear," Maggie croaked. "You don't hear my voice? You don't come till I got no voice?" Cousin responded like a stereotypic peasant to Maggie's efforts to placate him. His body language communicated stubborn passivity. His objections came out as whining complaints, the thin voice rising and falling, first a little screech, then a pouty whisper. "Your mother owes me," Cousin said, crossing his arms and staring at his feet. To this picture of wronged innocence, Cousin added a definitive humph and turned his back on Maggie. Maggie walked around in front of him to continue pleading. Anger rising in her voice along with desperation, Maggie explained the financial difficulties of the moment. "Cousin, you don't understand. Mommy has not paid the mortgage in 2 months. She has telephone bill. They shut off her HBO. She tried to turn on a movie for the kids and it was gone." "All my business is written down," Cousin said with a trace of smugness, adding another humph for good measure. This statement was met by snickers from the crowd, and some laughed out loud. Cousin became defensive. "You are trying to cheat me because you know I don't know how to write. You know how to write, and you cheat me." "How many tree leaves does your mother owe me?" Cousin demanded of Maggie, using his characteristic expression for paper money. "Find my list," he whined. "All my business is written down. I told you that. I always find somebody who writes for me." Maggie sent Robert searching deep in Asaka's Macau for a grubby little denim sack with drawstrings. When it was located, Maggie pulled out a rumpled scrap of paper. Sitting down in a chair near Cousin, she smoothed it out on her knee and began to read. "Femme Elud, $5.50. Gayson Robert, 5 tree leaves. Ty Bob." Azaka interrupted the reading. "Listen, that man took a lot of tree leaves from my hand. A lot. A lot. He's going to buy an acre of land. How much does he owe me?" $60, Maggie responded, and then added quickly, "My mother is looking for him, but she don't find him. He give her a telephone number, but it was no good." "I'm going to get my money this year, you hear?" Cousin announced with unusual force. "Get my purse," Maggie said to Robert. "I'm going to pay for my mother." Maggie was appearing all over the room as debts to Papa Zaka, most of them accumulated at last year's birthday party, were paid. It was unusual for Azaka to be conducting his own financial affairs. This role is usually filled by the female country cousin who walks with him, Cousin Zaka. 3 years earlier, Cousin had come to Alud's feast to handle Azaka's debt collection, and Maggie had explained to me, "Cousin is his secretary, his banker, whatever. She the one who have business stealing money. Azaka don't have no business. He work on the plantation. Whatever money he make, he give to her." This version of the relationship between Cousin and Cousin reflects traditional gender arrangements in rural Haiti, where, following a West African pattern, market women are the only ones who handle money. Recently, however, an entrepreneurial class of men has been steadily growing in the countryside. It is made up of farmers who have managed, often through political machinations, to amass large tracts of land, and wholesalers who buy such products as coffee from small farms and sell them to large exporting companies. Perhaps Azaka's role change was sparked by this social shift, although it seems more likely that his behavior that night in 1984 was a result of either Alud's fatigue, one possession is easier than two, or the pressing financial needs of her family. What followed was even more surprising, however, for Alud's Azaka also took over Cousin's market role. Content that he had settled his outstanding loans, Azaka decided to sell the items on his altar tables. Suddenly, animated, and sounding like a true Machan, market woman, he called out to people, "Come on, brother, come on, cousin, look at the big market. Come, come, come. You can choose, pick it up, go on. Pull it right out. Ha! You don't have to be afraid. Gayson Didi, you going to buy a little thing, just a real little thing, yes? Fan Linda, you going to buy for the children? You can't tell me you don't want to. Come on, come, come, come." The young man called Didi approached the table as Cousin pattered on. "What do you want in the market, cousin? What are you going to buy?" "How much for that cake?" Didi asked, pointing to one frosted in blue. 200 tree leaves, Cousin responded. First, people gasped, and then they laughed. "That's too much," Didi said, laughing himself. "How about that one?" And he pointed to an unfrosted sheet cake that Irma and her mother had brought for Cousin's altar. "Myself with you. We're going to negotiate," Cousin said with real relish in his voice, and he broke into a little song about how much he loved people to gather around him. He abruptly ended the song in mid-phrase and announced that the bargaining session was open. 47 tree leaves. Didi laughed again and came back. "How much of it will you give me for $5? "Half for 7 tree leaves," Cousin replied, then quickly qualified his answer. "The half of half." Didi agreed, and Papa Zaka balanced the sheet cake on his knees, cutting it in half and then in half again. Lifting the chunk of cake in his hand and moving it slowly up and down as if weighing it, Cousin looked to the crowd. "Bon matche, goodbye." Eh? There were polite murmurs of agreement, and Azaka nodded his head, well pleased with himself. Then he lopped off about a third of the piece and hid it in the corner of the cake plate behind his free hand, while he extended his other hand toward a chagrined Didi with a piece of cake in it no larger than an ordinary serving. The entire cake was sold in this fashion, with Cousin at the last moment slicing off a corner of the piece just sold. Finally, he sold the resulting pile of chunks and crumbs for $2. "Put another tree leaf on it," Azaka said to the amused buyer, "and you can take a piece of candy too." With no more cake to sell, Azaka turned to hawking pieces of fruit and candy, bottles of cola, and small fragments of cassava bread. He leaned hard on the unfortunate Robert, who was pressured into buying for his 3 children as well as himself. "You going to buy, cousin?" "Yes," replied Robert. "Choose." urged Cousin. "Oui," said Robert. "You talk a lot, yes, brother?" "It's not to talk, choose something," responded Azaka, using the distortions of Creole common to the speech of the spirits, distortions in which parler, or to speak, becomes poule, and bagay, thing, becomes bouge. Robert chose a banana, some cookies, and some hard candy. He began to peel the banana, but Cousin stopped him short. "Don't eat yet. Finish bargaining first." Despite language barriers, Robert finally got the message and handed the spirit $7. Earlier, Cousin had appointed Robert treasurer, and throughout the evening he handed over money to him, whether it came from debts repaid or from the sale of items from his market. Every now and then, he ordered Robert to count the proceeds out loud. On the first count, Azaka had collected $71. On the second, the total rose to $8, and on the third, it was $110. Not long after, even Azaka tired of these games. "Now I'm finished with business," he announced, and directed Robert to count the money one last time and divide it into 3 piles, being sure to hide them in different places for safety. "No matter what living person that comes who needs money, you may give it to them. You don't have to call me, no," Azaka declared. Then, in one last demonstration of character, he cut his eyes at Robert. "What about the pennies? You sitting on some?" "Cousin," Azaka whispered to Maggie, "check for me. What do you got in that hand?" The market was closed at last, and Maggie spread a clean white cloth at Azaka's feet in front of the now depleted altar tables. She pulled the brimming bowls of food from beneath Azaka's altar and placed them before him. It was nearly 4 a.m. as large portions of shaka, rice and beans, cornmeal, avocado, yam, and sweet potato were scooped out of the homely calabash bowls and onto plates for each guest. No one was allowed to refuse, and we were all expected to eat with our hands, the child's way of eating, the only appropriate way for the vivant, or living person, who are all children in relation to the spirits. No longer operating in the dangerous territory of finances, where competitiveness, guile, and suspicion are unappealing but useful character traits, Azaka became the generous host, urging food on all his guests. "You going to eat, brother? What do you want, cousin? Take some chaka, it's good." Expansive hospitality is a characteristic of Haitian peasants. An American friend who lived for several years in the Haitian countryside put it this way: "If you are a guest in their house, they will break their backs to feed and entertain you. Even if they have only a cup of rice left, you will get half." Haitian peasants are incredibly generous. They will give you anything, as long as it's not money you ask for. You can't even ask questions about money. The problematic nature of this contrast between hospitable family patriarch and canny businessman showed itself in a surprising way during the remainder of Alud's birthday party for cousin Azaka. When Azaka left, Ogu, Alud's major spirit, made his unexpected appearance. The first words out of his mouth were inquiries about what had transpired with Azaka. "Did he ask for money? Did you buy? Do you owe him? You, too?" Receiving affirmative responses all around, Ogu, the loyal warrior known for his integrity, sighed with disgust and shook his head. No, I do not like that." Then he consigned Azaka to his place with an uncharacteristically colorful epithet. "Kaka bandit!" The conflict was not resolved with Ogu's appearance. Just after 7 that morning, as the last of the guests were making their way out Legba's still open door, Alud collapsed in a chair, completely fatigued by the succession of spirits. First it had been Azaka, then Ogu, and finally Gede, the trickster spirit whose habit is to come last and stay long, his comic performance serving as a buffer between voodoo and the outside world. Sitting slumped over, barely able to keep her eyes open, Alud bid her guests goodbye. She also thanked them profusely for their help in serving the spirits. In the course of several parting conversations, she mentioned that she did not approve of Azaka's behavior. Alud and Maggie, Robert and his family, and I fell into our respective beds. I had been assigned the sofa bed in Alud's rarely used upstairs parlor, amid a menagerie of ceramic tigers, dolls, and stuffed animals. We slept until noon, when the noise of a Brooklyn street in early summer made further rest impossible. After cups of good strong café Rebo, Alud settled herself to call Cousin one last time so that he could direct the dismantling of his tables. For this truncated ritual, the Prie Deo were shortened to 2 Hail Marys, and there was one quick pass through the song calling on Legba to open the gate. After the third voodoo song for Cousin, the mountain man arrived. He was complaining as usual. Where was his Carabelle shirt? Where was his bottle of gin? He did not want to use them, he just wanted to be sure they were put away properly. Cousin also told Maggie what to do with the remaining food. Some was to be shared with friends, some was for the house. His directions were suddenly interrupted by a commotion at the basement door. "What's going on? The police!" shrieked Cousin Zaka. One of the neighborhood children had come to warn me that a police officer was about to ticket my car. I made excuses to Azaka and went out to explain that my registration had not really expired, but that I had simply neglected to attach the new sticker. After assuring himself that I sufficiently acknowledged his authority, the officer proved to be reasonable, and within 5 minutes I was back inside, only to find Azaka cowering. "I don't like police! You see police, you run! They beat people! I spent too much time in jail, I'm going now!" All around him, voices soothed. "You don't need to go, little cousin. He's gone. After making a small private loan to one of the past night's participants, Azaka now had $98 in bills and a sizable handful of change left in his 3 small sacks. 3 times he ordered it counted in front of him. The loose change, he said, was to be distributed among the boxes on the very spirits' altars in Alud's altar room. Then he asked if anyone in our small group wanted to borrow the tree leaves. On the first attempt, he found no borrowers, but the second time around, Maggie said she would take it. That was the signal to begin bargaining over interest rates. Maggie repeatedly referred to the $98 she would borrow, and Azaka persisted in calling it $100. After several exchanges, Maggie suggested that she was willing to pay back $150 on the 1st of May next year. $157, Cousin countered, and again Maggie agreed. In an aside to me, Maggie explained, I don't care. I know I can go to the bank, pay 10%, maybe 12% interest, but why should I let some stranger come here and then borrow the money and just go out, never to come back? Remember that guy last year? T-Bob? Huh. He owed Cousin $60. Now Mommy cannot even find him. Besides, this is not just money, this is special. Anything you put this money in, it's going to have good luck. I need some luck. If you don't pay May 1st, it's going to climb to $300, Cousin warned. Okay, said Maggie. One thing only I gotta say. I better be working from now until the 1st of May 1985. You take care of that for me. Cousin responded nonchalantly. You're going to find my money works, don't you worry. With his financial affairs finally laid to rest for another year, Azaka gave a personal message to each member of our small group. He told Robert that he would continue to come to him in his dreams. He assured me that he was going to give my book project a little push. Robert's wife was suffering from an annoying skin rash, and she was given a bottle of medicine made from Azaka's herb-laced gin and cornstarch. After mixing the brew, Cousin held the medicine bottle up to each of the 4 directions and blew sharply across its open mouth. He then set it on the floor in front of him and instructed Robert's wife to pick it up with both hands, but only after leaving 7 cents on the floor beside it. Maggie explained to her, something you can't just take. Even you just put a penny, that don't matter. You got to pay, or it don't work. Each of the Haitian voodoo spirits, in his or her own way, is a character defined by conflict. Azaka is no exception. He fed his children from the feast laid beneath his altar table, but only after he had cajoled and coerced them into buying the items on top of it. Cousin Zaka straddles 2 worlds, family and business. The currencies are different in these 2 worlds. Within the family, food and its metaphorical extension into all that feeds and nurtures is the means of exchange. Relationships last a lifetime, and although reciprocity is expected, no one keeps strict accounts. In the business sphere, the means of exchange is money. Money is for counting, it lends itself to precise reckoning. Unlike ongoing family relations, business deals are abbreviated exchanges with, more often than not, a loser and a winner. These worlds are in tension, a tension endemic to the life of the Haitian peasant who moves between farm and market, the country and the city. It is also a tension easily translated into the life of a New York immigrant. In voodoo, the tension between these antithetical worlds and the very different values and behaviors that each engenders is commented on and transformed in many ways. Don't put money on the bed, Alud yelled at me once as I started to dump out the contents of my change purse to look for a subway token. Why? I wondered, and then remembered one of the few hard and fast rules to emerge from my initiation. Don't put the asan on the bed. Never, never, never. The asan, like money, is an instrument of coercive power. It exercises control over the spirits who are thought to be compelled by its sound to come and go, more or less at the will of the manbo or ungan. Neither money nor the asan can be placed on the bed, for such distancing power implements do not belong in the place where children are made and born, the place where family begins. Azaka straddles these worlds in tension, and to some extent he also mediates them, reconciling the irreconcilable. The value of money is ordinarily equal to its quantity. 1 5-gourd note is as good as another. But in Papa Zaka's hands, money takes on quality as well as quantity. Robert's wife had to pay for her medicine, but the payment was only symbolic. And Maggie knew she could borrow from a bank more cheaply than from Cousin, but she borrowed from him anyway. This is not just money, this is special. Azaka's money brings luck. Cousin Zaka portrays the generosity and concern that prevail within a family group, but he also portrays the suspicion, even paranoia, that characterizes the attitude of such a tightly knit group toward all those who fall outside the protective circle. Participants in the dense drama of a voodoo ceremony play roles on both sides. Outsiders by definition at Cousin's market, they are cheated and suspected of pilfering his profits. Insiders at the family table, they are fed and given boons. Such role-playing is a rehearsal of and for life, and the lessons learned ricochet through the community. The challenge lies in learning these roles well enough to recognize the characters, values, and behaviors that clearly belong into each realm. Distinguishing between those who are inside and those who are outside the family group is far easier in the rural world of Cousin Zaka than it will ever be for a Haitian immigrant living in New York. This task highlights the significance of one part of the legacy of Joseph Bin Mavant. When he passed on to his children the most effective medicine he had, the medicine was African words that cast a clear and indisputable boundary between these realms. You in, you out, you stay out. In discussing her healing work, Alud cites her matrilineage more readily and more frequently than her patrilineage. Over the generations, the men in Alud's family have been less constant and less caring than the women, and they are less clearly models in her day-to-day operations as a healer. Their genuine power, however, will not be denied. When every other skill fails to heal a client, Alud turns to the legacy of Joseph bin Mavant. Pumping her left leg up and down and slapping her thigh each time it rises, Alud shouts, as her mother and grandmother did before her, "Thunder! Sim salalam! Sa salawu! Pa salam! Pa salawu!" And that person get well, baby, she tells me. They have to. That was my great-grandfather who left that word. It from Africa. Sometimes I'm in trouble and I repeat that word. Sim salalam! Sa salawu! Pa salam! Pa salawu. And everything okay. That word mean you in, you out, you stay out.
Science can explain everything if we look hard enough.
Shut up, science bitch.
Nothing is true. Everything is real. Not only is he like ruining my life, but with all this God shit that he's into, he could be ruining my afterlife.
It's a sort of interdimensional vagina that somehow appears. I can interact with it.
Fabric of the entire universe could be torn apart.
I know my mind is changing. I'm already too far gone.